Greetings! Welcome back to the Old Ways Rising Farm YouTube channel and the third installment in carving our little boat models. If you haven't seen the first two, I will put a link to the first one up at the top of the screen so that you can go back and start from the beginning and then work your way all the way up. Today we're actually going to carve the final model out, which is why we are here in my temporary wood shop. We're 2 years on our farm, and this ended up being the room that all of the extra moving boxes got stuffed that haven't been gotten to yet. So it's kind of a awkward place to do woodworking. But the upside of that is in the near future, when I build my nice workbench for here, we can do that as a build along together. So for today, we are in the little shop of horrors, and we will work on cutting out this blank. So, hon, if you could put the camera down on the blank, on the vise. So, I just have this set up in a mechanic's vise for the time being. And the first thing I want to do is just lop off all of the extra material. This is a miter box saw, but it works quite nicely for accurate freehand cuts as well. Okay. And then, as I mentioned in earlier videos, you have to watch your order of operations with this, because we have a line on the top, a line on the side, and a line on the bottom, and we need to make sure that we can get to each one of those lines in the proper order. Okay. So we're going to start with cutting out, because there's nothing on this fore side. There's nothing traced here. So we're going to cut out this line first.
And that's the top line, right?
Yeah, this is the top sheet.
Just keeping track of things.
Where my draw knife go? There we go. And I like to just do this with the draw knife. You can see we can pull ghastly hunks of wood off very, very quickly with this tool. If you had a large bandsaw, you could use that as well, but I mean, look at the chunks I'm getting off with this. These are great fire starter, by the way. I don't know that a bandsaw would even save that much time compared to an efficient draw knife. Now we're cutting in one tapered section. Where the draw knife does fall short is when you get to a knot, like right there. Okay. Now, I'm not sure if that knot's going to be much of a problem, but if it turns into a problem, we have the farrier's rasp. And that will just make very quick work out of any knots that we have to. Okay. That first half is cut out. Go for the second half. Eventually we're going to have dedicated rooms / buildings for the wood shop, the metal shop, and wood storage. But all of that takes time and cash. You think this draw knife is just fun. You can put wood on the floor real quick. And also, since we're off grid, I do have a small bandsaw, but it is a small bandsaw. It can never handle this stock thickness. But to use it, I have to pull a cord on a generator. So, if I'm doing a lot of something, a lot of something small, I will go and turn on the generator and just use it for an hour. But for this sort of one-off project, yeah, it's not worth it. Drawing knife is so fast. I mean, look at how long that didn't take, right? Okay. So that was our top line. It's our bottom line, right? If you cut out the bottom line and then look and you don't see the top line, you'll be sad. Don't be sad. Okay. Now we need to cut out the top of the profile here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this in the vise, and you're not going to be able to see all of these lines while I'm doing it because I need to see them. But I'm going to take and I'm going to cut a kerf down to about an 1/8 inch shy of that big black line on here and on here. I'm going to draw knife all of this wood off of the top as well. But the draw knife can dig in and give you a big split. You don't want that to go too far or too deep. So you give yourself a couple of stopping cuts like this. They'll keep you out of trouble. But I don't want those curves to mar the top of the finished boat model, so I'm going to stop a little bit shy. And now we just start pulling off wood. Now I like to cut down into the stop cut before I go all the way to the tip. Again, this has to do with errant splits and preventing them. We're giving the wood somewhere to go. It's easier than splitting the whole top of a board off. And this middle chunk we can pretty much just split off. That took real long, didn't it? Hand tools are terrible. They take forever. No, they don't. Okay, you can see the curve. Coming in nicely. I'm going to do the same thing over here. Now I'll come down to final depth here in the middle. Just flatten that out a little bit. Okay, there we go. Now this top surface isn't that important. We want to make sure that this line is accurate. Okay. This line here, we want to make sure that that is accurate. But this top surface, if it slopes a little bit forward or back, it doesn't really matter that much. Because this is not a reference surface. What we care about is where the boat meets the outside of the boat. This would be hollow, right? So this is a fiction. Everything here is just a fiction. That's hollow. Okay, now, what we want to do next is we want to take this bottom line, we're going to cut out this corner. We don't want to touch. Is my finger in frame? Okay. We don't want to touch this line at all. We want to take this and make an angled line from here to that top corner. Okay. That's the next cut. before I do that, I want to cut this out. I won't be able to clamp it in the vise after I do that. Getting ahead of myself for a second.
You're just so excited about your boat.
I am excited about my boat. Boats are fun. Okay. But as I start to make some of these, I need to refresh some of those lines. And the final refreshing of that line will happen when we do the final knife carving on here. This is just getting rid of the bulk of the waste. There's lots of finish work to do after this juncture. Hogging off the majority of the waste. Now at this little angle. Okay, there's that. Now, the bottom line meets right there, so we can just kind of rough in, eyeball that. They meet at that tip. Okay. So we can eyeball that in as a reference. We'll leave enough extra material on that we can double check that and re-ink that if necessary. But that's going to be pretty good. Now here, I want to keep track of where this line falls. I'm not going to need to go that far down. But just kind of do a little finger gauge thing there. They say I still have some of my line here and line there, so I can refresh that section. Same deal, I can do it again. Now, since I made this mark on the end, I can get back into it. And I just have this little high spot there. So you connect the dots. And we haven't lost our line. Now, we need to cut the end here, and then this. You can see it's starting to look more boaty. Less planky, more boaty. For this piece, I'm just going to come right back and do this with the miter box saw. Keeping that true, that plumb. Well, I'm looking at the thickness of the waist, and as long as this is staying even thickness, I'm plumb. Okay, there we go. Now this full profile is finished. The top profile is finished. We've just got to make these two lines meet. So we'll clamp it up in this direction. Take this corner out. The draw knife is probably my most used tool. Okay. There I started to dig in. It's a powerful tool. When you feel it digging in, don't keep going. You'll split off a big chunk. So now to prevent that, I'm going to come closer to the tip, work back to that trouble spot. Okay. And right at that trouble spot, is another good time to pull out Friar's Rasp. Okay. There we go. Now I'm going to pull it. I'll take it out and show you what we did. See, we have that line, and we just connected it to here, but without changing that final shape. Okay. Now, I apologize that I can't turn it around, but I need to be able to see where this line is as I'm working here. Ooh, okay. What'd I just say about splitting? Big chunk came out. Let's do an autopsy on this. Well, the pith is right there, so there was a weak ring. There's a weak lateral ring right in there. So there's probably a little bit of wind shake or something. Okay. Now, all is not lost, because I can glue that piece back in. Okay. I can glue it and clamp it, and then let it harden before I do the final shaping. So, oh, here's where it is. Yeah, so this knot that I was saying may or may not be a problem. There's a ring coming down in there, and the draw knife caught that ring. It wasn't following the rest of the grain pattern. So what I'm going to do is stick that in my pocket so it does not get lost. I can't imagine what it could hide behind and camouflage itself. Okay. I'm going to go to the other side of this knot and relieve all of this material. Also, this is that miserable hard and soft pine. It's just a random construction board that I glued in there. I love white pine. I hate it. And we will leave that mistake in this final video because we'll go inside and I'll show you how to fix it. Let's get as much of this gone as I can. But now that I know there's a problem, there's real ginger there. Okay, leave that knot. Let me go back to the rasp. Okay. Bye-bye knot. Bye-bye knot. No more problem. Okay. And we have roughed out our boat. A little rougher than I had intended. Okay. But if I show you this, which way is that going? That went in right there, right? So we will glue this in, and then I will just carve this out with carving knife and a rasp inside. That last little bit. And it'll be fine. We haven't lost anything, and we will still have a very nice model. So, we'll look at the second one, this big river driving bateau. And this is the same process, just a much more monstrous block. And this is all nice white pine. There are a couple of knots in here, but this is all nice white pine. Not how I would mount a vise. Don't mount a vise this way. I am very much looking forward to finishing this up. Okay. Take off the top. Now when you're gluing up a carving block like this, the nicest glue to carve through is white PVA. Here in the United States, the most common brand name is Elmer's, but there's lots of companies that make white PVA. It's very, very soft to carve through, so it won't blunt your tools as bad as if you do your glue up with yellow wood glue. Okay. Now, I ought to be about under that now. No, it's going in. So when I get a knot that's doing that, I carve down as close as I can to the problem spot. Actually, I can do a little bit more here. I'll come to the other side, throwing things at the camera, and leave that material on the other side. And then we will kind of hard to position. This block is so ungainly. We'll grab the big piston, and we will saw through that problem. This doesn't have to be a perfect square cut. As long as I don't violate this line or that line, it's fine. Down to final thickness, you can see there's still some knot there, but we got rid of a lot of the issue. And the rest of that we can probably just take out with the farrier's rasp in the last step. It's good to show you how to deal with those issues. Okay. So we're down to the line, but we have a little hump where that knot is. That's fine. Not worried about it at this stage. Plenty more work to do. We'll get it later. I like to use this drawn tiny shavings, right? Tiny shavings. I like to use this draw knife bevel down because you can kind of scoop. You can pull down, and then if you think you're getting too deep, you can tilt it up and change the angle of cut and cut through and solve a lot of problems. Unless you dig into hard grain. And then you put a piece in your pocket and fix it in the house. There's a little bit of gapping in this garage. That's okay. It's not a presentation model. It's a utilitarian model. What am I getting into? There's a little pin knot over here, so there must be some cross grain there. It's coming. Yeah. Our ancestors were really not at a disadvantage. Tool-wise. Move this in the vise a little bit. Right, a lot of people think if they don't have this jig or that apparatus or this power saw or that or the other thing, that you can't do a project. Well, nope. It's not true. All of these projects were done with hand tools for most of human history. Okay. There we go. Tiny boat. That's what we'll name this. How about that, hon? Tiny boat.
Sounds good.
Okay, now, just like before, we're going for this, for the top line. And just like before, I'm going to cut a couple of relief cuts in it. Not just like before, I'm going for a bigger saw. And again, they're about an 1/8 inch shy of the line. Right, these don't have to be precise, they're just safety measure. So, now, come in and start doing the thing. You can see when you're splitting off chips this size, you want to give yourself that little bit of margin by putting those stop cuts in. And then you don't have to worry about getting a bit aggressive with your tools. For this one, yeah. Now, here's the other thing you can do. For splitting off a chunk like this, you can just grab a chisel. Take off some even bigger hunks. All the closer I want to get doing that. you don't have nearly as much control that way. Now the reason I was willing to do that, you can see that cut, this juncture between the two boards is up from my line. Right, my line's right here, it's down here, over there. So I knew there was no chance that grain was going to run all the way down through my line. I'm going to stop there for now. Don't like that gap. It's not going to break or do anything bad, it annoys me. It annoys my perfectionism, even though it's really not a problem. Okay, so this knot is the other end of that one in the side that was giving us issue. So we know we're going to have some special attention paid to that spot. So I'm going to start on the side of it. Get as much away from it as I can. So here I can just kind of dig down in and pop it. Because of that stopping cut. Down into the hollow. Need to lift this up a little bit. Got to be careful here. At this juncture, I really don't want to dig in and split something nasty off, which I'm in danger of doing there, so I'm just going to kind of come backwards and shave that. It's not an efficient way to use a draw knife, but when I'm just cutting into some pre-existing shavings like that, it's okay enough. So we're about there, except for our problem spot over here. Let me see how much more I can get in there. To the line ahead of it, just split some of that off. Another knot there. This is just an unfun little spot right there. Okay, now we problem solve. Okay, we had a battery problem. It is now recharged, and just like before, I'm going to carefully cut through these knots, which is hard to hold safely. Yeah, we're well away from our line. Through the knot. We are through the knot. Okay. It's a bit awkward, but not bad. Now, so I can see the line a little easier. Back in the vise. And I'm going to rasp that off. Okay. Now this might actually let me get away with going back to the draw knife here. We'll see. We'll at least use it in alternating fashion with the rasp. Saw. We want to be careful because we are coming up on our line. And we got under those knots, and now it's smooth sailing. The thing I don't like about a metallic vise for this is you have to be really careful that you don't slip and ding the vise with the draw knife, or you get an extra 3 or 4 hours of sharpening. Don't ask me how I know. Okay. Now we'll go for the ends. And I'm going to start just by lopping these off with a saw. Yeah, Renee says anytime, Renee will verify, anytime I do that, I have a few things to say about it. Gosh golly gee whizzikers, I wish I hadn't have done that. It's exactly what I say, right, hon? Exactly what I say. It's an awkward angle to be sawing at, but I'm trying to do it so you can see. This time, I have that grid line that I can use as a straight line going down. Okay. So there's that end cut. And actually think I might do this one with this saw instead. Again, the problem is watching if you don't hit the vise. Over. Boys are two saws definitely be handy here. Now on this, I'm not too worried about the angle because the bottom line intersects right here where my finger is. The bottom line intersects right there. So it doesn't really, this is going to come to a knife edge right along that line. So I don't really need to care about being perfectly plumb here. Because regardless of how off of plumb I am, I was actually pretty close to plumb. All that's going to come away in the waste. Set the saw down. Okay. Now, Just thinking things through a little bit. Huh?
Block on the bottom, maybe. Do a screw on block on the bottom?
No.
No?
No. I'm just deciding on order of operations.
Yeah.
When I build that new vise I was talking about, at least one of them will have that new bench. There will be a quick release vise on it. Guarantee you that one. I'm going to take this up there. Okay. Refresh this line. Now this is actually a fairly decent plunging position. Hog off the material on the sides. There's a lot of material to hog. But look at what we carved out of a 4x4. That worked well. We'll do that exact same order over here. We have a kitty interloper, contributing cuteness to our afternoon. So I cut down to the line there, I'll refresh it. Again, I know I come to a point here and that edge is a knife edge, so I can just bring that in. Now we'll hog this side material. I mean, look at, these shavings are no joke. This is why I say, bandsaws are handy and fast for repetitive curve cutting. They are not necessary for a one-off project. Okay, that knot right there. Grass territory. Lost a little knot at the shear line there. That's not gonna make or break our model. Now, this is the awkward part, because I'm losing flat clamping surfaces. Always awkward, whether you're carving a boat or a duck or anything, when you lose your last straight thing to clamp to. Where's my draw knife go? There it is. Losing the tools. But this is good. We have some problems to work around that I can show you. Good demo. Scooch this back a little bit. Just take that last little triangle of wood out. little irregularity there, but we'll do that with our final tools inside the house. So, there is our Maine log driving bateau. And his still very large little brother, the Cajun cyprus bateau. So we will get set back up in the house, and we will glue that, and we will finish carving the log driving bateau. Welcome back inside. We have our 2 boat blanks cut out. For starters, I'm going to put the big log driving bateau aside and work on repairing this little split out. Now, when you're carving, splits are going to happen, especially if you're using inferior wood. And this, there was the knot, got a little much glue in there, more than I need. Let's scoop some of that back in. There we go. This had the knot in there, it's that hard and soft pine, and the pith was in there, so it just grabbed a growth ring and popped it out. And that'll happen sometimes. You don't need to be afraid of that. All is not lost. Happens to everybody. Now, if you're carving a spoon or something that you're going to have in a wet environment, yeah, you can't really come back for that. But for something like this that's ornamental and is already held together with glue, don't worry about it. We will simply glue this piece back in. Get it lined up right. Okay. Now I'll put some clamps on it. And if you saw the first of these, you saw that these are most of these models that I make have a complex layup from multiple flat strips, and they're already entirely held together by glue. So one more little glue joint is not a big deal. You have to make sure I get it clamped in from multiple directions. Hold that little chunk on. Okay. And now I will set this aside till tomorrow. And I will show you how I do the finish work using this big guy as an example. Now, the first thing I like to do is flatten the top. And I like to do this with big rasps. This is considerably bigger a piece than I've worked on to this point, so it's hard to hold. But rasps like this are really good at finding the high spots. And knocking them flat. I don't want to get too far out to the tips though with this coarser rasp, because it can grab a chunk and pop it out. And then I'll have 2 glue ups in progress. These are just a squirrely shape here. But it's good to do this with something that's completely inflexible. And now while I'm at it, yeah, the other one will work better. Okay. So we're good with that one. This is the one I use most for most of these models. This is a Shinto rasp. You can get these all sorts of different places. This one is popped. The one weakness in this is these rivets. And what this is it's a stack of hacksaw blades that have been bent and kind of formed that diamond pattern. And there's a coarse side and a fine side, and it's very aggressive and very good for this sort of stuff. This is what I use the most on these. For something this size, it's nice to have the surface area of the farrier's rasp. Now with this one, I'll start to get in a little closer to the tip, but still being real careful. Take some of the fuzz off. Okay. And I'm only going to show you the carving. I'm not going to show all of the defuzzing and sanding, or you'll leave and go watch a more interesting YouTube channel where they're, drying paint or something like that. But I will show you the basic shaping processes. Now this is a greater rake angle than the other end, right? So on this end, I did go out that way because it's gentler. This is swooped up a little bit more. The rasp is digging in a little bit more, so I'm going to go down because that's less likely to split it out. Okay. So that's flattened and shaped. This, we don't care about at all. Next thing I'm going to do is go around, just trim and even the shear line here. Some carvers get all of these real elaborate jigs and setups and fancy vices, and do I want to tinker with some of that stuff? Yeah, eventually, but you don't need it. Just do the vast majority of my carving right here in my lab. Okay. Now we'll round this off. Remember I said here in a couple points, well I was talking about that one, but same with this one. I just made a straight line and said we'll just take care of the roundness, even that out. After it's all cut out, well, this is where we're doing that. And I'm just looking at the back, and I just want to exactly make that line disappear. And when it disappears, we're done. I hope you're enjoying seeing some bandsaw-free ways to do curved work. Also, you could never cut this out accurately on a bandsaw, at least not safely. Some people will get into trying to hold it and go through all sorts of convolutions there, but it's not safe. It's not good. Okay. So now that's finished and flat. So these two surfaces are flat. We've got one more. I'm going to start by going around and trimming this edge. Same way I trim the top edge. Okay. Rasps are very useful and I think underrated woodworking tools. The farrier's rasp and these Shinto rasps are my favorites. I'm not as big a fan of machine stitched rasps because the tooth pattern is a little bit too regular and it tends to just carve a groove and then get stuck in it. And most of the ones that I've used are made out of steel that's so soft the teeth blunt easy, even when you're only doing this kind of woodwork. The farrier's rasp is a machine stitched tooth, and it does have the first problem, but it's made for hard material, so it doesn't have the second. There are hand-stitched rasps that some people swear by. I haven't used them because they're really expensive. I just haven't gotten them yet. Now what I'm doing here, come back to that thought in a second, this is just going for flat. I have a well-defined line here along the shear. I have a well-defined line on the bottom, just connecting them with a straight line. I do want to get some and test them out, and then I can give them a review. It's on my things to do list. Don't know when I'll get to do it. Here, I'll bring this out to that. It comes to a true point. This pine is sufficiently soft, I'm not going to actually take it to a true knife edge, but I'll get it reasonably close. And then just round it over a little bit so that anybody viewing it will say, oh, that's clearly intended to be a point. That final rounding will happen with sandpaper. Because again, the risk of, even with this finer tooth pattern, hanging a tooth and ripping out is a little bit too high. Try to get to that final profile with this thing. Okay. A little bit of a high spot here that I'm seeing. Okay. Just want the straight lines. And you can pretty effectively use your body as a clamp for this sort of work. And this is how humans have been doing woodwork for thousands of years. Many thousands of years. And it still works. The difference is I have the blessing of a partially broken rasp instead of doing this with a chunk of rock. And I like doing it this way. It's just relaxing. Just sit, chill, file, sand. Uncomplicated. So this is probably bigger than any boat model you'll ever make. But I wanted to do it here because I figured it would pick up well on the camera. And it lets me make the whole bateau family tree, which is kind of fun too. Okay. And with that, we have a boat. Okay? Bow, stern, flat. I'm going to do a little bit of sanding right here. And there's a little bit of a flap that didn't quite get glued down nicely. So I'll try and, get a toothpick and wiggle a little bit of glue under there and do a little extra sanding on that spot. And sand the whole thing. But from here, the shaping is finished, right? Literally, I'm not depriving you of anything. The shaping is fully finished. Right? This is the model. I'm going to do a little cleanup here, a lot of sanding. But I'm quite confident that your imagination is sufficiently fertile that you can picture me here with a sanding piece of sandpaper, right, smoothing off my boat. So I will, excuse me, sawdust in my throat. I will end this little demo at this point. I will do the sanding, and then tomorrow or the day after my time, 4 or 5 seconds in your time, I will come back and we'll have a big reveal of the whole bateau family. So I'll see you then. Welcome to tomorrow. We have our finished boats. I'm going to show you these. Before I do that, I just want to put a couple things out here on the table for scale, right? Everything that I have here is modeled to the same scale, 1 to 12, which is 1 inch to a foot. That's just convenient size to work with for the materials that are readily available here in the United States, where we are still cursed with the imperial system. So just kind of for a little bit of a scale bar to this project, is for the final show of everything. This is a little canoe model. This is a Micmac birch bark canoe, and this was a small portaging canoe. And this would be about the size of, a typical one-person pleasure canoe. This one is an Ojibwe long-nose canoe, again, a birch bark model. This was a rice harvesting canoe, and this is, about the size of a two-person or small family pleasure canoe. So I'm just going to put those here up front for a sense of size scale. Also, for a sense of size scale, this little, I'd shown this earlier in the first part of this video series. This little presentation model is a 12-foot Finger Lakes trout boat, and this would be, a small one-person rowing craft, okay? So I just wanted to put those, I'm going to have to set that one that way, up front so that you have a sense of scale as we're showing the rest of these. And then we come to our very, very large, finished Maine river driving bateau. Okay. So again, this is the size of boat that was used for, and these were built very, very crudely. They would be built by the log crew when they were loading logs into the river, and then they would follow the logs down in these, and it was a stable platform from which they could unjam log jams. Right? But this is about the scale. This is 32 feet long. Okay, so 32 inches long in my 1 to 12 scale. These were about the same dimensions as what the military bateaus of the French and Indian War and Revolutionary War would have been. So this is pretty fairly true. You can see you have the flat in the bottom is curved, and the sweep of the nose and the tail of the boat are just kind of the natural consequence of taking a flat board and bending it around that starting curve, right? So these were very crudely made. It's quite a bit more difficult to plank the thing so that you don't get this much upsweep than to plank it so that you do get this much upsweep, right? So that's kind of the point of origin for the bateau family. Then you have this I had made previously, a light river bateau. These were used in the fur. This is the size that was used in the fur trading days. This is also sort of a Maine style and Canadian maritime style, but it compares fairly favorably to, a two-person canoe, a little bit larger, a little bit more industrial. Right? Then you have the Cajun pirogue, which compares quite favorably to a one-person boat, and these are still very popular in Louisiana, very popular one-person boats. The Chesapeake Bay Railbird Poling Skiff, the double-ender model, virtually indistinguishable from our Maine bateau. We'll put it there. That one is a tiny bit smaller, but that's a single person's design choice, right? And the blunt stern version of the poling boat, a little bit different. This one has some fairly substantially different lines to it. Will it balance? Nope. I'm losing boat Jenga. Okay. We'll put that one out in front. And then we have the Cajun cyprus bateau, which is quite a bit different, but you can still see in the sweep of the nose the family resemblance, that it's a member of the family. This is the 25-foot model, which is, as I had mentioned previously, it's a composite of about 4 different designs and 6 different photographs, right? So it's kind of a compromise. If anybody out there has actual drawings for a historic example of this boat, I would love to hear from you. Put a comment down below. So I'm out of space, so I will just hold on to this one. Now, remember, this is the boat that had that piece pop out that I repaired, and that piece that popped out, I can just barely see a shadow right there. And I honestly can't find where it came back in over here, right? So if a piece pops out on you like that, all is not lost. Glue it back in. That glue joint will be stronger than the wood surrounding it, right? And, I mean, a model like this is held together with glue anyway, especially these more complex ones with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 pieces of wood in the stack already. Right? So, don't be afraid about that. Don't be afraid if a little something happens to it. You can pop it back in, just make sure you don't lose the piece. Right? You can pop it back in, put a little glue in there, and that's fine. The only actual blemishes that I can see in this are a little divot there, which happened when I dropped it as I was sanding it. That's just my fault. And a little bit of chip out there right around that knot. But that's unrelated to this piece that came out. There's a teeny tiny bit of chip out right there. If you're going to paint a model like this, you don't need to even care about those. That's what filler is for. Just put a little wood filler on and sand it back to flush. If you are going to clear coat these, then you can still fill that in, but if you're going to clear coat it, and you have a little teeny tiny divot like that, fill it in with gel super glue. Okay? Gel super glue. Let it mount it up a little bit, let it harden overnight. It's not going to be a it's going to take more than just a few seconds to harden if you're putting a lump of super glue in there. Sand it back flush, and then use a clear spar varnish or tung oil varnish. And those have about the same refractive index as the super glue, and you won't ever see it. Nobody will ever know that you filled a little divot in the wood. Okay? So if you're going to clear coat it, do that. These are all hand tool, except that we're having a very windy day outside, so our windmill is happy, so I could pull out my palm sander, and I did use my palm sander as a little power tool cheat to do some of the final sanding on these two big ones. It's more trouble than it's worth on these little ones. But on these big ones, it's a handy thing. So I did use that one little power tool cheat, and I'll let you know that I did use that one little power tool cheat just because it made finishing up these big flat surfaces a whole lot faster than 2 or 3 hours with a sanding pad in here. But that's the final reveal on the project. We have the whole bateau family tree and 2 more models for the skill building collection. I might be a nerd. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and we'll see you in the next episode of Old Ways Rising Farm.